The stars had never looked so close. Commander Day-Wan stood on the bridge of the Earth-ship Destiny and watched the view screen with careful eyes. Outside, space stretched forever in all directions. Earth was far behind them now, just a blue dot in the darkness. They had traveled farther than any human had ever gone before. It was the year 2287. Humanity had finally done it. They had broken free from their solar system. Dr. Hana's quantum drive made it possible. The brilliant scientist had worked for 10 years to create a machine that could push ships faster than light itself. Now, 5 human ships moved through deep space, exploring the galaxy that had been just a dream for so long. Day-Wan was a soldier. He had fought in the Mars Rebellion 20 years ago when the colonies tried to break away from Earth. That war had been brutal. Thousands died in the red dust of Mars before peace came. The experience changed him. He learned that war was ugly but sometimes necessary. Now he commanded Earth's defense fleet, and his job was to protect humanity as they reached for the stars. Behind him, Captain Jiwoo checked the navigation systems. The young pilot was the best Day-Wan had ever seen. Jiwoo could fly a ship through an asteroid field with her eyes closed. She was brave, maybe too brave sometimes, but Day-Wan trusted her completely. The mission was simple. They were supposed to explore 3 nearby star systems, looking for planets that humans could live on. Earth was getting crowded. The colonies on Mars, Europa, and Titan helped, but humanity needed more space, more room to grow. The universe was big enough for everyone. Then everything changed. The alien ship appeared without warning. One moment space was empty. The next moment a massive vessel hung in front of them. It was 3 times bigger than any human ship, made of materials that seemed to glow with inner light. Beautiful and terrible at the same time. Day-Wan's heart raced, but his voice stayed calm. He had trained for this moment, even though no one really believed it would happen. First contact with alien life. It was supposed to be humanity's greatest moment. The alien ship sent a message. The translation came through in perfect English. Someone named Ambassador Vexron wanted to speak with Earth's leaders. Day-Wan sent word back home immediately. It would take hours for the message to reach Earth, even moving faster than light. He kept his fleet at a safe distance and waited. 3 days later, the alien ambassador arrived at Earth. Vexron came with a fleet of 20 ships. They entered Earth's space without asking permission. They simply appeared near the moon and demanded a meeting. Premier Taiyang, Earth's elected leader, had no choice but to agree. Dr. Hana was there when Vexron came down to Earth. She stood in the Great Hall in Geneva with Premier Taiyang and 200 other important people from around the world. Everyone wanted to see the first alien visitor. Everyone hoped for friendship, for knowledge, for a peaceful future among the stars. Vexron walked into the hall, and Hana felt her hope die. The alien was tall and thin, with skin that changed colors like oil on water. Its eyes were cold. It looked at the humans the way a scientist might look at interesting insects. When it spoke, its voice was flat and emotionless. The ambassador brought a message from something called the Galactic Council. According to Vexron, the council ruled over 10,000 worlds. They had watched Earth for a long time. They had seen humanity's wars, their weapons, their violence. They had decided that humans were too dangerous to be allowed freedom in the galaxy. The council had rules for young species like humanity. They called it protection, but Hana heard it for what it really was: slavery. Humans would have to give up all their weapons. They would have to accept council governors on Earth. They would have to follow council laws. In return, the council promised safety and guidance. Premier Taiyang was a peaceful man. He had spent his life working for unity between nations. He believed in talking and finding common ground. But even he could see that Vexron was not offering a choice. The ambassador was delivering an order. Submit or face the consequences. Taiyang asked for time to discuss the offer with Earth's governments. Vexron gave them 1 week. Then the aliens left, returning to their ships orbiting near the moon. They stayed there, silent and watching. The week that followed was chaos. Every nation on Earth argued about what to do. Some wanted to accept the Council's terms. Life under alien rule might be better than war against an enemy they could not possibly defeat. Others refused. They said humanity had not climbed out of caves and conquered their own world, just to bow down to alien masters. Day-Wan brought his fleet back to the solar system as fast as the quantum drives could push them. He knew what was coming. He had seen it before in the Mars Rebellion. When someone stronger demands surrender, they have already decided to attack. The only question is when. He was right. On the 7th day before Premier Taiyang could give an answer, the Council attacked. Ships appeared from hiding spots throughout the solar system. They had been there all along, hiding beyond Neptune in the cold darkness of the Kuiper Belt. Dozens of warships, all of them bigger and more powerful than anything humanity had built. The Battle of Neptune began without warning. Day One's fleet was near Saturn when the attack started. He ordered all ships to battle speed immediately. Engineer Kyung, his weapons specialist, worked frantically to arm every missile and charge every weapon they had. But they were too slow. The Council ships moved like lightning. Their weapons reached across millions of kilometers and struck with perfect accuracy. The Mars colony fell first. Its defense satellites exploded like fireworks. Then Europa went silent. Then Titan. In 3 hours, humanity lost everything they had built beyond Earth. Day One fought back with everything he had. He knew his ships were no match for the alien technology, but he refused to run. These were his people dying. His duty was to protect them even if it cost him his life. Jiwoo flew like a demon, dodging energy beams that could vaporize her ship in an instant. Kyung fired missile after missile, hoping to find some weakness in the alien shields. They found something. Not a weakness exactly, but a pattern. The Council ships moved in perfect formation. They followed textbook tactics like they were fighting a training exercise instead of a real war. Day One realized the aliens had not fought a real battle in a very long time. Maybe never. He changed his tactics. Instead of fighting fair, he fought dirty. He used asteroids for cover. He sent false signals to confuse their sensors. He had his ships split up and attack from unexpected angles. It worked just enough. The human fleet was still losing, but they were losing slower. When the order came to retreat, Day One followed it. Premier Taiyang had made the hard choice. Earth could not win this battle. But maybe, if they survived, they could win the war. Day One gathered every ship that still could fly and ran. They fled to the edge of the solar system, to the Oort cloud where ice and rock floated in the darkness. Behind them, Council forces landed on Earth. The occupation began. Vexron broadcast a message to the entire planet. He said that humanity's foolish resistance was over. Now they would learn to obey. Now they would accept their place in the galaxy as servants, not equals. Dr. Hana escaped Earth on one of the last transport ships. She brought her research, her team, and the quantum drive technology. In the hidden base in the Oort cloud, she met with Day One. The commander looked tired. He had lost 40% of his fleet. Thousands of good people were dead. Earth was under alien control, but Day One was not defeated. He looked at Hana and the other survivors with fire in his eyes. The Council had made a mistake. They thought humans would break easily. They thought fear would make humanity surrender. They were wrong. They had not conquered humanity. They had made humanity angry. And angry humans were the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy. The real war was just beginning. 6 months had passed since the Council conquered Earth. Colonel Young-ho crouched in the ruins of what used to be Seoul. The city was half destroyed now. Council soldiers walked the streets in their shining armor, enforcing rules that made no sense. Humans could not gather in groups larger than 5. They could not own weapons. They could not speak against the Council. Anyone who broke the rules simply disappeared. Young-ho had been a special forces commander before the invasion. He knew how to fight enemies with better weapons and more soldiers. The trick was to never fight fair. Hit fast, hit hard, then vanish before they could hit back. He had taught these tactics to 300 people in Seoul alone. Across Earth, thousands of others were learning the same lessons. Tonight, his team would strike again. A Council supply depot sat on the edge of the city. The aliens thought it was safe because it was far from the resistance hideouts. They were wrong. Young-ho and his people had been watching the depot for weeks. They knew when the guards changed shifts. They knew where the cameras pointed. They knew everything they needed to know. At midnight, the attack began. Young-ho's team moved like ghosts through the darkness. They cut through the fence with tools stolen from a Council construction site. They placed explosives on the fuel storage tanks. Then they were gone, running through the streets before the first alarm sounded. Behind them, the depot exploded in a ball of fire that lit up the night sky. The Council sent soldiers to search for the attackers. They found nothing but empty streets and closed doors. The people of Seoul said nothing. Even those who were not part of the resistance helped by staying silent. The aliens could not tell friend from enemy. Every human was a potential threat. Far beyond Earth, in the hidden base in the Oort cloud, Dr. Hana worked day and night. She had a laboratory now carved out of an ice asteroid. It was cold and cramped, but it had everything she needed. The Council had made a mistake when they attacked. They left behind wreckage. Pieces of their ships floated in space, and Day One's people had collected everything they could find. Hana studied the alien technology with wonder and growing excitement. The Council ships were amazing, yes, but they were not perfect. In fact, they had weaknesses. Big weaknesses. The aliens had been at peace for so long that they forgot how to build ships for real war. Their shields were powerful but used a single frequency that never changed. Their weapons were accurate but fired in predictable patterns. Their hulls were light because they relied completely on shields for protection. Engineer Kyung worked beside Hana in the laboratory. The weapons specialist was a genius at taking things apart and putting them back together in new ways. He looked at the alien power cores and saw possibilities. He looked at their shield generators and saw targets. Together, Hana and Kyung began to create something new, something the Council had never seen before. They called it the Prometheus Project, named after the ancient human who stole fire from the gods. Humanity would steal the Council's technology and make it better, make it deadlier, make it human. The first breakthrough came when Hana figured out how to make shields that could change frequency rapidly. The Council shields stayed at one frequency because changing used too much power, but human power systems were built different. They were less efficient but more flexible. Hana could make a shield that jumped between frequencies 100 times per second. Any weapon locked onto the shield would lose its target constantly. Kyung took the next step. He built weapons that could learn. The Council used missiles that followed pre-programmed flight paths. Kyung built missiles with artificial intelligence based on human computer systems. His missiles could think. They could adapt. They could hunt ships that tried to dodge them. A new scientist joined their team. Dr. Sung was a xenobiologist who had been studying the few Council prisoners Day One had captured. Sung made a disturbing discovery. Most Council species came from peaceful worlds. They had never developed the immune systems that humans had. A common earth cold could kill them. They were physically weak compared to humans. They could not handle high gravity or temperature extremes. Commander Day One listened to all these reports with a cold smile. The Council thought they were superior. They thought humans were primitive. But humans came from a death world. Earth was harder, meaner, and more dangerous than most planets in the galaxy. Humans had evolved to survive conditions that would kill most aliens. That evolution made them strong. Day One began training his remaining ships with new tactics. They practiced fighting in ways the Council would never expect. They used asteroids as weapons, pushing them into enemy paths. They practiced ramming maneuvers because sometimes the best way to destroy a ship was to crash into it. They practiced boarding actions because humans were much better at close combat than most aliens. Lieutenant Minji joined his staff as intelligence officer. The young woman had a gift for understanding enemy communications. She had stolen a Council communication device during the retreat from Earth. Now she spent her days listening to enemy transmissions, learning their codes, finding their weaknesses. Minji discovered something important. The Council military was not unified. Different species had different ideas about how to control Earth. Some wanted harsh punishment for human resistance. Others wanted to negotiate. The disagreements meant the Council forces were slow to make decisions. Slow could be deadly in war. 4 months after the occupation began, Day One decided it was time to strike back. He chose a target carefully. A Council supply convoy traveled between Jupiter and Saturn every 2 weeks. The convoy carried food, fuel, and equipment for the occupation forces. It was protected by 3 warships. Not enough to stop a determined attack, Captain Jiwoo volunteered to lead the mission. She took 5 ships, all of them upgraded with Hana's new shields and Kyung's new weapons. They waited in hiding near a small moon of Jupiter. When the convoy appeared, Jiwoo attacked. The battle was short and brutal. The Council warships tried to lock their weapons onto the human ships, but the changing shield frequencies confused their targeting systems. They fired missiles, but Kyung's smart missiles were faster and more clever. They dodged the enemy fire and struck the Council ships with perfect accuracy. In 10 minutes, all 3 Council warships were destroyed. The supply ships surrendered without a fight. Jiwoo's team did not lose a single ship. They captured the supplies and brought them back to the hidden base. More importantly, they had proven something crucial. Humans could win. Ambassador Vexron received the news on Earth. He was not worried at first. He called it luck. One small victory meant nothing. But the Council military commander Voxlar was not so sure. Voxlar was a veteran of many peacekeeping missions. He had never seen an enemy adapt so quickly. He had never seen such aggressive tactics. He began to wonder if the Council had made a terrible mistake. The Council's response was to crack down harder on Earth. They increased patrols in the cities. They arrested thousands of people on suspicion of helping the resistance. They made examples of anyone caught breaking their rules. Public executions became common. The aliens thought fear would break human spirit. They were wrong again. Every execution made more humans join the resistance. Young Ho's network grew from hundreds to thousands. They struck at Council forces every night. Small attacks, hit-and-run raids, sabotage of equipment. Nothing big enough to bring massive retaliation, but constant enough to keep the aliens nervous and exhausted. More importantly, something unexpected was happening across the galaxy. Other species under Council control were watching Earth's resistance. They saw that humans refused to give up. They saw that humans could hurt the mighty Council. 3 species began their own rebellions copying human tactics. The Council suddenly had problems everywhere, not just on Earth. In the hidden base, Daewon held a meeting with his top people. Hana, Kyung, Jiwoo, and the others gathered in the command center. Daewon showed them intelligence reports from Minji. The Council was stretched thin. They were using ships meant for exploration as warships. They were pulling forces from peaceful sectors to deal with rebellions. They were making mistakes. Daewon's plan was bold. In 2 months, they would launch a major offensive. They would hit Council forces throughout the solar system, all at the same time. They would coordinate with Young Ho's resistance on Earth. They would free the colonies on Mars, Europa, and Titan. They would show the Council that humanity was not defeated. Humanity was just getting started. Everyone in the room knew the risks. They might lose. They might die. But they also knew they had no choice. Humans could not live as slaves. They would rather fight and lose than surrender and survive. That determination, that refusal to quit no matter the odds, was humanity's greatest weapon. The Council did not understand it. Soon they would learn. The Prometheus project was ready. The fleet was trained. The resistance was armed and waiting. In 2 months, Earth would strike back with all its fury. The galaxy would shake, and the Council would finally understand their fatal error. They had not conquered humanity. They had awakened something far more dangerous than they could imagine. 18 months had passed since the Council invaded Earth. The day of reckoning had arrived. Commander Daewon stood on the bridge of his flagship, now renamed the Phoenix. Behind him stretched a fleet of 40 ships. Some were original Earth vessels repaired and upgraded. Others were captured Council ships that had been taken apart and rebuilt with human improvements. All of them were ready for war. Operation Flashpoint was about to begin. Daewon had planned every detail carefully. His fleet would strike 5 targets at exactly the same moment. The Council forces would not know where to send reinforcements. They would panic. In panic, they would make mistakes. And mistakes would cost them everything. Captain Jiwoo commanded a strike group heading for Earth orbit. Her mission was the most dangerous. The Council had a massive command station floating above Earth. It controlled all their forces in the solar system. Jiwoo had to destroy it. She had 12 ships against a target protected by 20 warships. The odds were bad, but Jiwoo had never cared much about odds. On Earth, Colonel Young Ho received the signal he had been waiting for. In cities across the planet, resistance fighters picked up their weapons. They had hidden guns, explosives, and supplies for over a year. Now it was time to use them. Young Ho's target was the Council military headquarters in Seoul. 3,000 alien soldiers worked there. By morning, they would all be dead or running. At exactly midnight, Operation Flashpoint began. Jiwoo's ships came screaming out of the darkness. The Council defenders had 3 seconds of warning before the human missiles hit their shields. These were not normal missiles. Kyung had built them with one purpose in mind. They could think faster than any computer the Council had. When a shield blocked them, they calculated a new attack angle in microseconds. They came at their targets from 100 different directions at once. The Council shields held at first, but they could not adapt fast enough. One by one, the missiles found weaknesses. Explosions bloomed across the defending fleet. Jiwoo's ships moved through the chaos like sharks through blood in the water. Her pilots had trained for this moment. They knew exactly where to shoot, exactly when to turn, exactly how to make their enemies die. In Seoul, Young-ho led his fighters through the streets. They moved in small groups, hitting council patrols from ambush. The aliens tried to form defensive positions, but humans knew the city better. Humans knew every alley, every rooftop, every basement. They appeared from nowhere, killed quickly, and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. The council military headquarters burned. Young-ho's people had planted explosives in the building's foundation weeks ago. When the timer reached 0, the entire structure collapsed in a cloud of dust and fire. Ambassador Vexeron watched from his compound on the other side of the city. For the first time since arriving on Earth, he felt real fear. Above Earth, Jiwoo was winning. 8 council warships were destroyed. The others tried to retreat, but human fighters were faster. Jiwoo herself flew straight at the command station. Her ship's weapons were charged and ready. She fired everything she had. Energy beams and missiles struck the station from all sides. The station's shields collapsed, and then the station itself exploded in a ball of white light. The council command network went silent. Every alien ship and soldier in the solar system suddenly lost communication with their headquarters. They were alone, confused, and surrounded by angry humans. That confusion was exactly what Day One had counted on. At Mars, another battle was beginning. This was Day One's main target. The Council had 50 warships stationed at Mars, more than anywhere else in the solar system. Their commander was Voxlar, the military leader who had defeated humanity 18 months ago. Voxlar was smart and experienced. Beating him would not be easy, but Day One had advantages that Voxlar did not expect. The human colonies on Mars had been working secretly for months. They had built weapons that the Council never discovered. Railguns were hidden in the valleys of Mars. Missile silos were buried under the red dust. Fighter ships waited in caves on the slopes of Olympus Mons, the biggest mountain in the solar system. When Day One's fleet appeared, Voxlar thought he understood the battle. The humans had fewer ships. They would lose. He ordered his fleet to attack in standard formation. That was his first mistake. Day One's ships did not fight in formation. They scattered like leaves in the wind, forcing the Council fleet to spread out trying to chase them. Then Mars itself attacked. Railguns opened fire from hidden positions. Solid metal slugs traveling at incredible speed slammed into Council ships. The shields could stop energy weapons easily, but kinetic weapons were harder to defend against. Several ships took damage immediately. Voxlar tried to regroup his fleet, but it was too late. Missiles launched from underground silos. Hundreds of them, all guided by artificial intelligence that could think and adapt. The Council Point defense system shot down many missiles, but not all. Not nearly all. Explosions rippled through the Council fleet. Ships died in fire and metal. Fighter ships poured out of the caves on Olympus Mons. 50 small, fast ships flown by pilots who had been born on Mars and knew every trick of fighting in thin atmosphere. They hit the Council fleet from above, diving out of the sun where sensors could not track them well. Then Lieutenant Minji played her card. She had been inside the Council communication network for months. She knew their codes. She knew their systems. At the perfect moment, she sent a signal that looked like it came from Voxlar himself. The signal ordered half the fleet to move to new positions. Half the Council ships obeyed immediately. They broke formation just as Day One launched his main attack. The Battle of Mars became a slaughter. Confused Council ships shot at each other, thinking they were firing on human vessels. Voxlar tried desperately to restore order, but the damage was done. His fleet was broken. His ships were dying. He had no choice but to order a retreat. The survivors ran, jumping to faster than light speed as quickly as their engines could manage. 30 Council ships escaped. 20 were destroyed or captured. For the first time in the war, humanity had won a major battle. Day One watched the retreating ships and allowed himself a smile. The Council had thought humans were weak. They were learning the truth. Humans did not fight like other species. Humans fought to win no matter what it took. In the days that followed, the other human strike groups reported success. The colonies on Europa and Titan were free. Council forces throughout the solar system were either destroyed or fleeing. Earth itself was rising in rebellion. Young-ho's resistance fighters controlled half of Seoul. Similar reports came from every major city. The occupation was collapsing. Engineer Kyung began the next phase of the plan. His teams moved through the wreckage of the battles, collecting intact council ships. Anything that could fly would be repaired and added to the human fleet. Anything too damaged would be stripped for parts. Humanity was learning fast. They were taking council technology and making it better, stronger, deadlier. Lieutenant Minji made another important discovery. She had captured several council communication devices during the battles. Now she could listen to transmissions from across the galaxy. What she heard was shocking. The council was not united anymore. Many species were questioning the invasion of Earth. Some thought humanity should be offered peace. Others wanted to escalate the war to planet-killing weapons. Most interesting was a message from someone called Ambassador Telrin. Telrin represented a species called the Kelthians. The Kelthians believed the Council had made a terrible mistake. They wanted to make contact with Earth and discuss peace. Minji brought this information to Daewon immediately. Daewon met with his advisors. Dr. Hana argued that they should listen to Telrin. Maybe not all aliens were like Vexron. Maybe some of them could be reasoned with. Jiwoo disagreed. She said the Council could not be trusted. They had attacked without warning once. They would do it again. Young-ho, joining them by video link from Earth, took a middle position. Talk to the Kelthians, he said, but keep the guns loaded and ready. Premier Taeyang made the final decision. He sent a message to Telrin agreeing to secret talks, but he also prepared for the worst. He ordered Daewon to continue building up the fleet. He ordered Young-ho to keep the resistance ready to fight. If peace failed, humanity would be ready for war. 1 week after the Battle of Mars, a Council dreadnought entered the solar system. It was the largest warship humanity had ever seen. 2 kilometers long, armed with weapons that could destroy entire cities with single shots. The dreadnought sent no messages. It simply moved toward Mars, ready to demonstrate what happened to species that defied the Council. The hardliners on the Council had made their move. They were sending a message written in fire and death. Humanity would submit or Mars would die. Every human in the solar system would watch and learn what defiance cost. Daewon looked at the approaching dreadnought and felt ice in his heart. This was it, the real test. Everything they had fought for came down to this moment. Could humanity stop a ship designed to kill planets? Could they win against impossible odds one more time? He did not know. But he knew humans would try. They would fight until the last ship was destroyed and the last soldier was dead. Because that was what humans did. They refused to quit, ever. The Council dreadnought moved through space like death itself. Its name was Eternity's Light, but there was nothing light about it. 2 kilometers of armor and weapons commanded by Supreme Admiral Colvin. The Admiral was a hardliner who believed only strength mattered. He had orders to destroy Mars completely. Every human watching would learn that the Council's patience had limits. Ambassador Vexron stood on the bridge beside Colvin. The ambassador was pleased. Finally, the Council was showing proper force. After Mars burned, Earth would surrender immediately. Then other rebellious species would see what happened to those who defied the Council. Peace would return to the galaxy, enforced by fear and overwhelming power. 20 escort ships surrounded the dreadnought. They were some of the Council's finest warships. Together with Eternity's Light, they formed a fleet that could conquer most civilizations by itself. Colvin was confident. No force in the solar system could stop them. Mars would die in 3 hours. Commander Daewon saw it differently. He stood in the command center on Mars and looked at the tactical display. The dreadnought was powerful, yes. Unstoppable, no. Nothing was truly unstoppable. Everything had weaknesses. His job was to find them and exploit them before Mars became dust and memory. Dr. Hana worked frantically in her laboratory. She had studied every piece of Council technology they had captured. She knew how their shields worked. She knew how their power systems operated. She had an idea, a desperate idea, but it might work. She called it the gravity well generator. If she could create a strong enough gravity field, she could trap the dreadnought in normal space. It would not be able to escape to faster than light speed. Engineer Kyung had his own preparations. He had modified 20 human ships with ramming prows, heavy reinforced metal designed to punch through shields and armor. The ships also carried boarding pods filled with Marines. If they could get close enough, humans would take the fight inside the dreadnought. And inside a ship, In narrow corridors and small rooms, humans were deadly. Captain Jiwoo would lead the fighter wings. She had 60 ships under her command, small, fast, and armed with Kyung's smart missiles. The fighters could not destroy the dreadnought alone, but they could strip away its escorts. They could create chaos and confusion. In chaos, anything was possible. Major Boram commanded the Marines. 2,000 soldiers waited in the boarding pods, checking weapons and armor for the 100th time. Boram was a veteran of every major battle since the invasion. She had fought Council soldiers in space stations, on asteroid bases, and in the wreckage of destroyed ships. She knew their weaknesses. They were slow in close combat. They panicked when things did not go according to plan. Most importantly, they had never experienced the pure fury of humans fighting for survival. When the dreadnought reached Mars orbit, Daewon gave the order. Every ship, every weapon, every human in the solar system moved at once. It was not a battle plan. It was an all-out assault with no reserves and no retreat. They would take the dreadnought or die trying. Jiwoo's fighters struck first, 60 ships diving from different angles, missiles already launching. The escort fleet tried to form a defensive screen, but there were too many targets coming too fast. The Council point defense systems could not track everything. Missiles slipped through and hit shields. Some escorts took damage immediately. Then the main fleet arrived. 40 human warships, all weapons firing. Railguns sent metal slugs screaming across space. Energy beams carved through the darkness. The escorts tried to respond, but they were already dealing with the fighters. The coordinated attack overwhelmed their ability to react. 3 escorts exploded within the first minute. Colvin watched the chaos with growing alarm. The humans were attacking in a way that made no sense. They were not trying to preserve their ships. They were throwing everything into a single massive assault. Some human ships were deliberately ramming the escorts, destroying both ships in suicide attacks. It was insane. It was also working. Dr. Hana activated her gravity well generator. The device was built on the largest moon of Mars. It drew enormous amounts of power from reactors buried under the surface. When it turned on, space itself bent. The dreadnought's engines screamed as they tried to push the massive ship to faster than light speed. They failed. The gravity well held them locked in place. Vexron understood what was happening. The humans had trapped them. They could not escape. For the first time since arriving at Earth, the ambassador felt genuine terror. These primitive creatures had forced the mighty Council fleet into a battle they could not run from. Kyung's ramming ships moved in. They were slower than the fighters, but much heavier. Their reinforced prows glowed red from friction as they accelerated to maximum speed. The escorts tried to stop them, but half the escort fleet was already destroyed or disabled. The ramming ships hit the dreadnought's shields like hammers striking crystal. The shields held at first. They were designed to stop energy weapons and missiles, and they were very good at that. But they were not designed to stop massive amounts of kinetic force delivered all at once. The ramming ships did not explode. They pushed. They drove forward with engines at maximum power, forcing the shields to work harder and harder. Something had to give. The shields collapsed in sections and the ramming ships struck the hull. Metal screamed as the prows punched through armor. Atmosphere vented from the wounds. Emergency systems tried to seal the breaches, but the human ships were still there, still pushing, making the holes bigger. The boarding pods launched. They attached to the dreadnought's hull near the breaches. Cutting torches burned through metal. Major Boram was in the first pod through. She stepped into a corridor filled with smoke and spinning debris. A Council soldier appeared, raising its weapon. Boram shot it twice before it could fire. The fight for eternity's light had begun. The Council crew had never experienced close combat. They were scientists, engineers, and technicians who happened to serve on warships. They knew how to operate weapon systems and maintain engines. They did not know how to fight an enemy they could see and touch. The human Marines did. They had trained for exactly this situation. Room by room, corridor by corridor, the humans took the ship. They moved in small teams, covering each other, using tactics developed over thousands of years of human warfare. The Council soldiers tried to stop them and died. Some aliens tried to surrender. The humans took them prisoner and kept moving. Nothing would stop them from taking this ship. Admiral Colvin realized his ship was lost. He tried to activate the self-destruct system, but human hackers had already taken control of the computer network. Lieutenant Minji, working from a ship outside, had cracked the dreadnought's security and locked out the command codes. The ship would not destroy itself. The admiral would have to surrender or die fighting. Ambassador Vexeron ran. The proud ambassador who had delivered the Council's ultimatum to Earth now fled through the corridors of his own ship, looking for an escape pod. He found one and climbed inside. The pod launched, but it did not get far. A human fighter intercepted it and forced it back to the dreadnought with warning shots. Major Boram reached the bridge. The doors were sealed and reinforced. She ordered her engineers to bring up heavy cutting equipment. It took 20 minutes to burn through. 20 minutes of tension where anything could happen, but nothing did. When the doors fell, the humans rushed in and found Admiral Colvin standing alone. The rest of his bridge crew had abandoned him. Colvin looked at the humans with something like respect. He had fought many battles in his long career. He had won them all through superior technology and overwhelming force. Today he learned that sometimes courage and determination mattered more than weapons. He lowered his hands in the Council gesture of surrender. The battle was over. Humanity had won. Commander Daiwan boarded the dreadnought an hour later. He walked through corridors marked by battle damage and stood on the bridge where Council officers once commanded. Now the human flag hung there instead. The sight filled him with fierce pride. Humans had done the impossible. They had captured a Council dreadnought, but Daiwan did not celebrate yet. He had one more thing to do. He ordered Lieutenant Minji to activate the dreadnought's galaxy-wide communication system. This ship could send messages to every Council world simultaneously. Daiwan was going to use that ability to speak to the entire galaxy. Premier Taiyang arrived at the dreadnought the next day. He had prepared a speech, something he hoped would change everything. He stood on the bridge with Daiwan, Dr. Hana, and the others who had made this victory possible. When the communication system was ready, he began to speak. Taiyang showed footage of the battle. He showed human courage and skill. But more importantly, he showed footage of Council atrocities on Earth. The executions, the torture, the cruelty that Vexeron had ordered. He proved that the Council's claim of bringing civilization was a lie. They were conquerors who used pretty words to hide ugly deeds. Then Taiyang delivered humanity's message. Earth wanted peace, but only as equals. The Council would recognize humanity's sovereignty. All Council forces would leave the solar system. War criminals like Vexeron would face justice. In return, humanity would not take revenge. They would not bring war to Council worlds. The Council chamber had never been so loud. Representatives from 10,000 worlds shouted at each other, while Grand Chancellor Othamar tried to restore order. The debate had been going for 3 days straight. Some species wanted immediate peace with Earth. Others demanded total war, even if it meant destroying the human homeworld completely. Ambassador Telrin of the Kelthian Republic stood to speak. The chamber quieted slightly. The Kelthians were respected for their wisdom and long history. Telrin spoke calmly but firmly. The Council had made a terrible mistake, he said. They had attacked a species they did not understand. They had underestimated human determination and overestimated their own strength. Now 3 other species were in open rebellion, inspired by Earth's example. The Council faced an existential crisis. The hardliners refused to listen. They argued that giving in to human demands would destroy the Council's authority. If Earth won freedom through violence, every subjugated species would try the same. Better to make an example of humanity, they said. Better to show what happened to those who defied the Council, even if it meant genocide. But Grand Chancellor Othamar saw the truth that the hardliners refused to accept. The Council could not defeat humanity without destroying themselves in the process. Humans had proven too adaptable, too fierce, and most dangerous of all, too inspirational. The rebellion was spreading. More species questioned Council authority every day. If the Council tried to destroy Earth, half the galaxy might rise up in revolution. After 5 days of debate, Othmar called for a vote. The question was simple. Would the Council negotiate peace with Earth, or would they escalate to planet-killing weapons? The vote was close, frighteningly close. But in the end, the moderates won. The Council would talk. Telrin would lead the negotiating team. The negotiations took place on Europa, one of Jupiter's moons. Premier Taiyang chose it as neutral ground. The location was symbolic. Europa was one of humanity's first colonies beyond Earth, a place where humans had learned to live in the harshest conditions. Now it would host the talks that might bring peace to the solar system. The human delegation was small. Premier Taeyang led it, supported by Commander Daewon and Dr. Hana. They represented different aspects of humanity. Taeyang was the voice of peace and diplomacy. Daewon was the sword that had defended Earth. Hana was the mind that had given humans the tools to fight back. Together they would speak for their entire species. Telrin arrived with Grand Chancellor Othmar. The Kelthian ambassador was tall and moved with gentle grace. Othmar was different, more formal and stiff. But both showed genuine respect when they met the humans. There was no arrogance now, no assumption of superiority. The council had learned that lesson in Blood and Fire. The negotiations were difficult. The humans demanded full sovereignty and council membership as equals. They demanded reparations for the damage done to their colonies. They demanded that war criminals face justice. Most importantly, they demanded that the council reform how it treated developing species. No more forced subjugation. No more claiming to protect species that did not ask for protection. Some demands the council accepted easily. Others took days of arguing. But slowly an agreement took shape. Earth would become a full council member with all rights and privileges. The council would pay for rebuilding the damaged colonies. Fexron and other war criminals would be tried by an independent tribunal. And the council would create new laws governing first contact with developing species. Commander Daewon insisted on one more thing. The council had to acknowledge publicly that they were wrong to invade Earth. They had to admit their mistakes and apologize. Telrin agreed immediately. Othmar hesitated, but in the end he agreed too. Pride was worth nothing compared to peace. The Treaty of Europa was signed 3 weeks after negotiations began. It was broadcast across the galaxy. Billions of beings watched as humans and aliens signed the agreement that ended the war. Some celebrated. Others were angry. But everyone understood that something fundamental had changed. The galaxy would never be the same. Commander Daewon retired from military service. He had spent his entire adult life as a soldier. He had fought in the Mars Rebellion, defended Earth from invasion, and led humanity to victory against impossible odds. Now at 50 years old, he was tired. But he could not rest completely. Premier Taeyang asked him to serve as Earth's first ambassador to the Council. Daewon accepted. He would represent his species in peace as he had defended them in war. Captain Jiwoo took command of Earth's defense fleet. Under her leadership, the fleet grew stronger every year. Human ships now patrolled the solar system and beyond. Jiwoo personally oversaw the integration of captured Council technology with human innovations. The result was a fleet unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Fast, tough, and crewed by people who knew how to fight. Dr. Hana continued her research, but now she worked with alien scientists instead of against them. The quantum drive technology that had started everything became common across the galaxy. But Hana was already working on the next breakthrough. She believed humans could push ships even faster than current technology allowed. The universe was vast and humans wanted to explore all of it. Engineer Kyung oversaw the joint human-alien shipyards that were built at Mars. The Red Planet became a center of spacecraft construction. Ships built there combined the best of Council efficiency with human durability. Other species came to Mars to learn human engineering techniques. Jung taught them gladly. He believed that knowledge should be shared, not hoarded. Lieutenant Minji joined a new organization called the Interspecies Intelligence Service. The Council created it to prevent future conflicts through better communication and understanding. Minji's gift for understanding alien thinking made her invaluable. She spent her time traveling to different worlds, building networks of contacts and information. She hoped her work would prevent another war like the one Earth had just survived. Colonel Young-ho returned to Earth and helped rebuild Seoul. The city had suffered terribly during the occupation and the battles, but humans were good at rebuilding. Within 5 years, Seoul was more beautiful than ever. Young-ho became the city's mayor. He worked to create a place where humans and aliens could live together peacefully. Many aliens came to Earth now, curious about the species that had shaken the galaxy. 5 years after the Treaty of Europa, humanity had transformed. They were no longer isolated on one small planet. Humans traveled across the galaxy, trading, exploring, and sharing their culture. Human music, art, and literature spread to thousands of worlds. Human ideas about individual freedom and democracy influenced alien societies. Some aliens found these ideas dangerous. Others embraced them eagerly. The Council itself was changing. The rigid hierarchy that had ruled for millennia was loosening. Species that had been subjugated for generations were winning their freedom, not through war but through negotiation, backed by the threat of human intervention. Earth made it clear they would support any species seeking independence. That support often made the difference between success and failure. Human military doctrine was taught at Council war colleges now. Alien officers studied human tactics, trying to understand how such a young species had defeated forces that should have crushed them. The answers were not simple. Human success came from many factors: adaptability, determination, willingness to take risks, and most importantly, the absolute refusal to accept defeat. But not everything was peaceful. Ambassador Day-Wan received troubling intelligence from Telrin. The Kelthian had become a close friend over the years. Now he came to Day-Wan with a warning. Beyond Council space, in a region the Council had avoided for centuries, there was a hostile empire called the Dominion. This empire was larger and more powerful than the Council. They viewed the Council as weak prey, ripe for conquest. Telrin explained that the Dominion had been watching the war between Earth and the Council with great interest. They had seen how humans fought. Now they were trying to decide if humanity was a threat that needed to be eliminated or a potential ally against the Council. Either way, contact with the Dominion was coming soon. The Council needed human military strength for what would happen next. Day-Wan brought this information to Earth immediately. Premier Taiyang called a meeting with all the key leaders. They gathered in the rebuilt hall in Geneva, where Vexron had once delivered his ultimatum. Now they met as free people to discuss the next challenge. Dr. Hana studied the intelligence reports on the Dominion. She was worried. The Dominion had technology even more advanced than the Council's. They had been fighting wars for their entire history. They would not underestimate humanity the way the Council had. This would be a different kind of challenge. Captain Jiwoo was less concerned. She believed humans could face any threat. They had proven that already. The Dominion might be stronger than the Council, but they had never faced humanity. They did not know what humans were capable of when fighting for survival. Commander Day-Wan, now Ambassador Day-Wan, looked at the star maps showing Dominion space. He thought about everything humanity had overcome. The Council invasion, the occupation, the desperate battles, the final victory, all of it had made humans stronger. The galaxy thought it knew what humanity was capable of.